So, America has a debt problem, and honestly, the number we're dealing with today is almost impossible to wrap your head around. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a cinematic deep dive into the absolutely astonishing scale of American household debt. This isn't just some boring story about spending too much cash. It's really the story of how modern life works and how debt quietly, invisibly dictates almost every single aspect of our existence. Let's dive right in. $18.8 trillion. Seriously, just let that number sink in for a second. That massive figure is the total amount American households owe right now. But here's the trick, right? Here's why this number has exploded without setting off alarm bells every single day. Debt has become so totally normalized that we don't even call it debt anymore. It's perfectly disguised in our everyday lives as a simple monthly payment. Because let's face it, a monthly payment looks totally manageable, even when the total financial mountain towering over you is just enormous. Now, before we go any further, we really need to draw a hard line in the sand. This astronomical $18.8 trillion figure, that is U.S. household debt. It is not America's national debt. The national debt is the money owed by the federal government. What we're talking about today is deeply personal. It's the money owed by individuals and families. We're talking about your mortgages, your cars, and your credit cards. Section 1, where the debt lives. Let's break down this $18.8 trillion. All right, looking at the breakdown, a massive anchor immediately jumps out. Mortgages make up by far the largest slice of the pie, with American households owing more than $13 trillion. But right behind that giant chunk, we've got the heavy burdens of auto loans and student loans, both sitting at roughly $1.7 trillion each. And then there are the credit card balances, hovering right around $1.25 trillion. When you stack all these slices together, that's how you get to that almost incomprehensible $18.8 trillion. But here's a really crucial piece of nuance. Not all debt is equally dangerous. On one side, you have what we call healthy debt. Think of borrowing money to build an actual asset, like a home that might appreciate in value, or taking on a reasonable student loan for an education that actually boosts your earning power. But on the flip side, we have dangerous debt. That's borrowing money for immediate consumption, like swiping high-interest credit cards to buy stuff that loses its value literally the second you buy it. So instead of just asking if debt is inherently good or bad, we really need to be asking, what is this debt actually being used for? Section 2, the monthly payment trap, the psychology of spending. Look, credit cards are incredibly convenient. You just tap and go. Boom, the purchase is finished in seconds. But think about the psychology behind that for a minute. You spend money today, next month rolls around, and you still have your normal rent, groceries, and utilities to pay, right? But now, you also have to use next month's paycheck to pay for last month's groceries. It turns into this permanent, exhausting trap. Honestly, one of the most dangerous features of consumer debt is exactly this. It literally turns your future income into a payment for your past. You see, financial freedom isn't really about how much you earn. It's about how much of your future income you actually control. Let's imagine two different Americans. Both earn an identical salary of $80,000 a year. On paper, they look exactly the same. But the one on the left is buried in heavy debt, a massive mortgage, a huge car loan, student loans, and maxed out credit cards. A huge chunk of their future income is already spoken for. Now look at the person on the right. They have low debt. Their financial lives are completely different. The person on the right has options. They can save, they can invest, they could even switch careers if they wanted to. The person on the left? Zero options. Debt doesn't just cost you interest, folks. It costs you your options. Section 3, looking rich versus being wealthy. The illusion of affordability. Just think about the compounding costs of owning a financed car. Americans owe $1.7 trillion in auto loans, mostly because, well, cars are treated as these ultimate symbols of success. You get a raise, you immediately upgrade your car, and bam, you increase your monthly payment. But a car depreciates. You've got insurance premiums, fuel, maintenance, and endless repairs, all while you're still making a loan payment on a machine that's rapidly losing its value. You can look incredibly rich driving around in an expensive car with zero money actually invested, while someone else drives a totally ordinary car and is quietly, steadily building a massive wealth portfolio. Now let's keep this explainer balanced and totally factual. When you see these massive numbers, it's pretty easy to panic. But the reality? Most of this $18.8 trillion in debt is actually held by borrowers with really strong credit histories. So the data doesn't actually prove that America is automatically barreling towards some 2008-style financial crash. The real danger here isn't a total systemic collapse. The danger is a single household's lack of resilience. Think about it. What happens to a family carrying massive monthly payments if their income suddenly drops? That is exactly where everyday financial stress becomes completely catastrophic. And you know what usually causes that vulnerability? Lifestyle inflation. Imagine you go from earning $60,000 a year to $100,000. That's a huge upgrade, right? But then you go get a more expensive apartment, a pricier car, more subscriptions. You start dining out way more often. Suddenly you're earning a lot more money, but you still feel completely broke. Why does that happen? Because you permanently increased your expenses right alongside your new income. If your income goes up, your savings and investments absolutely must go up too, or you just become a higher income person with way higher expenses. Section 4, Future Income versus Past Consumption, a total shift in mindset. It really all comes down to this one specific psychological shift that financially smart people use when they evaluate a purchase. The trap mindset always asks, can I afford the monthly payment? If you ask that, I guarantee you will always be poor. The wealth mindset asks something totally different. What will this purchase do to my financial future? When you invest, you're actively putting money toward building future wealth. But when you constantly borrow to finance your consumption, you are basically making claims against income you haven't even earned yet. Section 5, Reclaiming Your Financial Future, Taking Back Control. If you actually want to take control of your financial destiny starting today, you need a solid roadmap. Let's walk through these 5 crucial steps. First, calculate your total debt commitment, and I mean everything, not just the credit cards. Second, take a hard look and assess if your debt is actually building an asset or if it's just fueling consumption. Third, check your survival timeline without income. This is exactly where a healthy emergency fund saves your life. Fourth, aggressively resist lifestyle inflation the second you get a raise. And fifth, start building assets, because paying off debt is really only half the battle. The other half is building real wealth through savings, investments, and learning new skills. Because at the end of the day, the ultimate goal isn't just having a zero balance on your debt. The true goal is financial flexibility. It's all about securing the freedom and the options that only come with total financial control. We're talking about the option to walk away from a toxic job, the option to handle a scary medical emergency without totally panicking, the option to start your own business. It is the absolute power to say no. Financial freedom is created by having those options rather than being forced to make major life decisions based purely on what your monthly payments dictate. America's $18.8 trillion household debt problem is, at its very core, a story about future income. And so I want to leave you with a final, profound question that you really need to ask yourself honestly. Is your money working for your future, or is your future working to pay for your past? Really think about that. Understanding how to take control of your money can completely change the trajectory of your entire life. If you found this explainer eye-opening and you want to continue learning how to build true wealth, make sure to subscribe. Because remember, the goal isn't to look rich. The goal is to become financially free.